Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Roderich Körner and I am partner at Business Markets Germany. I am happy to meet all of you in our webinar today. We are coming to you live from the AB studios in Opwijk, close to Brussels in the heart of Europe. As we have quite some first-time participants in this session, let's quickly go over some practical details. As participant, you can see a few tabs on the right-hand side of your screen. On the left, there's a question tab where you can send your questions directly to us during the session. At the end of the session, we have a Q&A part where we will take time to answer these. Right next to the question tab, there's a chat tab. At several moments during the presentation, you may be asked questions that you can respond to here. I would also like to welcome you on behalf of the entire Business Markets team. For those who have not met us yet, we are a dynamic and atypical team of consultants, each with a remarkable track record in business. Our core team today consists of about 30 experts working mostly in Europe, more specifically the Benelux, DACH area, and France. The Business Markets team serves over 150 customers in various sectors and sizes. Since our first project about 10 years ago, we have built up quite some expertise in the following 4 fields. We start from the why and the what. Together with your team, we build your actionable strategy from definition to execution. If you know where we want to go, we need to engage your people. This is where we look at your organization taking care of your most valuable asset, your human capital. Then we focus on your valuable customers and partners with branding and marketing strategies. Finally, we look at operational excellence, reviewing processes within the organization from digital transformation to business intelligence. When Corona hit, we decided to share our knowledge in these domains with you in the form of webinars that started last July. This is the 8th in a series that Edith's Ticket kicked off with strategic planning in July last year. We followed by customer experience in September, and Erwin brought you the batteries of sales in October. Bram launched the export rocket with you in November, and Lucia brought us employee engagement in December. Christophe and Serge showed you how marketing and sales will finally get along with our marketing process. And Lucia and Edith showed you growth opportunities outside of your marketing budget. And to remind you, all of these past webinars are available for replay on our website, businessmarkets.com. Today is about growing into new territories, and it's my pleasure to announce to you our next event. On May 5th, my colleague Serge and the fine people at CFO Centrum will show us how to master the essentials of finance as non-finance managers. Today is about growing into new territories as cheaply as you can. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to my colleague Fritjof, who's managing partner at Business Markets. Fritjof, kick it away.
Thank you, Roddy. Hello, everybody, live from the AB studios in the center of Europe. You just see a picture of Fritjof Nansen. He is my namesake. He's not only my namesake, but we share a passion for exploring. Fritjof Nansen was a Norwegian explorer. He led the team that made the first crossing of the Greenland interior 133 years ago in 1888, traversing the island on cross-country skis. Why am I telling you this? Because today it's all about exploring new territories. Companies spend a lot of money while entering new markets. There are many stories of smart companies that incur serious losses when entering new territories. Do you remember the first years of Disneyland Paris? The resort opened in 1992 after 4 years of construction. I think up until today, there are roughly around 320 million visitors in the park. But it was not a financial success from the beginning. Why? What happened? The business plan of Disneyland Paris was based on the experiences in the US. Assumptions were made based on the experiences in the US. For example, it was calculated that people would stay in an average 4 nights in the park. In reality, they stayed 2 nights. Why? The park was smaller, there were less attractions, no need to stay 4 nights. So revenues didn't come as planned. Secondly, it was planned to make a certain amount of revenues on food and beverages of people eating in the park. Americans, they are masters in fast food, in eating quickly, maybe eating standing. No, Europeans, we like to sit, we like to be comfortable, take our time to eat. So less people could eat, the capacity wasn't there to serve all guests, so people had to go outside the park to eat, revenues didn't come up. And the last example, merchandising. Americans like to spend quite a lot of merchandising on merchandising. But we Europeans, we like souvenirs, but we decided we'll spend a bit less, so also revenues didn't come up. So today, let me take you to explore a new approach to explore new territories for your ventures. We at Business Markets help organizations grow, to drive growth. It's our passion. No doubt, ambitious organizations have great people on board, but sometimes they need experienced experts to accelerate growth and be ready for the future. Today, I'm sharing you our experience, how we help companies to grow in new territories as cheaply as possible in a grow as it goes manner. How? Let me introduce you to what we call our discovery-driven phased approach model. But why am I a fan of this model? Because following a discovery-driven phased approach encouraged entrepreneurial spirit and let you start in new territories, let you start new ventures. But what are the main elements of the discovery-driven phased approach? You go step by step, phase by phase. You accept that you're in a mode of continuous learning. And while continuous learning, you limit your pre-investment. You only spend that much as needed for the step you want to take. So while learning continuously and allowing to fail smart, and soon if you have to fail, and therefore cheaply. But what is the difference to conventional planning tools, you may ask? Conventional planning, in general terms, tend to go to full-blown investments. There are many stories of smart companies that incur serious losses when entering new territories. In our experience, many failures can be prevented or their loss contained if management approached these initiatives with the right planning and tools. So we suggest to follow a strategy of real options thinking. The aim is simple. It's to lower the threshold for entrepreneurial activities in your organization and companies, in larger one, in mid-sized one, in smaller ones. But before diving deeper in the way how to do it, let us quickly have a common understanding about the definition of new territories in today's context. New territories can be new countries, new markets, new regions within existing markets, other countries, new customers, new channels, new production lines. So following a discovery-driven phased approach, you can enter in any new terrain. So in general terms, we are speaking about new ventures. New means there is a lot you don't know. At start, we must accept the fact there is a lot we do not know. So we have to make sure that we learn as much as possible by spending as little as possible. That is quite a challenge. In most companies, plans are made. Business plans, financial plans, marketing plans, sales plans, HR plans, or maybe an OGSM plan, as we make often together with our customers. The OGSM plan is a business plan on a one page. OGSM stands for Objective, Goals, Strategies, and Measures. And summarized, I said everything on one page. But remember, the plan is only as good as the assumptions the plan has been made on. So if we go back to the example of Disneyland Paris, the plan might be faulty if the assumptions are not tested and not correct. But now back to the execution, because today it's not about making plans. Let's do some guided business development together, and let me share you a dynamic way forward into new territories. Before I dive deeper in the discovery-driven phased approach model, as such, I would like to briefly refer to the scholar layer behind the model. Ian McMillan from Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania and Rita McGrath from the Columbia Business School wanted to facilitate entrepreneurial corporate entrepreneurship. So in established firms, and they called it internal venturing. So they came up and developed the concept of discovery-driven planning. It's all about creativity paired with discipline. The discipline of planning with an openness of a beginner's mind. So let's have a look at what we have made out of it. Pairing management theory with long-term experience in helping companies to grow. I will walk you to our discovery-driven phased approach model first, and its 5 phases. And in a second step, I will relate the model to a simplified corporate example and how it actually works in the real world. After all, we are action and result-oriented people. Our discovery-driven phased approach model consists out of 5 phases. We start with the pre-phase. In the pre-phase, we do our homework. We got all the data we need to make a plan. We got the data that we want to benchmark. In the start phase, what we call also the startup phase, we're going to test our plan, our venture in a real-life environment. After that, we go up to a scale-up phase where we scale up the business, we scale up the organization to enter into a management phase where we aim more for operational excellence, to end up in a handover phase where we basically end up in a day-by-day operation. But remember, as Jeff Bezos said, every day is as they treat every day as day one. Of course, we need to bring some measurability into our model and into our process. So we propose to use 4 key documents. It's not complicated, but if you use these 4 documents consequently in the process, you can keep the measurability of what you're doing. The first document would be a reverse income statement. Here we set a financial goal about what we want to achieve first, and then subsequently, we define what we are allowed to have as costs, how much revenues need to be generated in order to achieve our financial goal. In our operation specifications document, we just laid out what is it exactly we're going to do. In the milestone assumption plan, we link the assumptions to the milestones at which they can be tested. And in the key assumption checklist, we just list all the milestones, all the assumptions we have made that needs to be tested. It's a living document, and we will have to define new assumptions throughout the process. So spring is in the air. The weather is getting good. Temperatures are rising. So let's bring some flower power into the corporate world. Let me introduce you to our case of today, an anonymized case, the company Flowerpot SAL, based in Lyon, France, established in 1905, more than 150 years ago. Of course, this is a simplified model. Flowerpot SAL is a vertically integrated company, from stone quarry to the distribution and sales of terracotta flower pots. They have a 45% market share in France. That are handmade, high-quality products made in France. Apart from France, they have some limited success in other markets. They're active in Spain, in Portugal, in Italy, through external distributor partners. In 2012, Flowerpot was offered an opportunity. They could acquire a market player in the Swiss market. They had no experience with Switzerland at all and acquired that company. To make a long story short, after 6 years, this venture was sold at substantial loss. So Flowerpot asked us to guide them to a potential market entry in Germany. But based on their previous experiences with going abroad and limited success, a negative return on investment, they wanted to do it right this time. So we used the discovery-driven phased approach model to help them and guide them through their market entry in Germany. Recall, the Ddpa process consists of 5 phases: pre-phase, jumpstart, scale up, management phase, handover phase. We're going step by step, phase by phase. In the pre-phase, remember, at start, there's a little we don't know. Homework needs to be done as part of the pre-phase. We are not on the road yet, we're in the preparation mode. We frame our venturing. We define what our objective is, and going to Germany was the objection, achieving a profit contribution of a certain amount of euro, which meant selling 200,000 flower pots per year. Just to compare and benchmark, in France, the company Flowerpot sells 800,000 pots per year. And the aim was to have a 10% market share by 2024. As business markers, we first made, as part of our homework phase, a market snapshot for the clients. A market study was commissioned to bring the German terracotta market into picture. Competition information was gathered. So we were looking at all the data we could find to benchmark the venture and the plan. We agreed together with the client on rules of engagement, and a milestone assumption plan was defined. Last but not least, we made a reverse income statement for the first 3 years of the business. The expected profit contribution of flower pots with the business in Germany was defined. And then we looked at how many pots need to be sold in order to achieve the profit that was planned, and what are the costs of distribution that could be allowed. All assumptions we used in the framing, in the benchmarking, in specifying the deliverables and the milestones were documented in our key assumption list, maybe one of the most important documents. So summary of the pre-phase, homework has been done. It's time to go from the conceptual phase into the front-loading phase. Let's enter the jump phase or the startup phase. But please remember, we must test our plan in a real-life environment. Still, we do not go at this stage for full-blown investment, which in this case would be building a depot, hiring people on a payroll, hiring a marketing team, a sales team, bookkeeping people. So we define a limited scope of activity and resources and then started. We gather experience with the aim to test all the assumptions that were made and put into our model. We learned as we went, step by step, phase by phase. So now we alive, the jump phase has started. Step by step also means that we have to define milestones within the phases. Milestones at which points assumptions can and have to be tested. If we speak about milestones, we think they should not be taken as a given. They have specific characteristics. The first characteristic is cheap, okay? Professor Christoph Zott from the Jesse Business School, the university where I studied, would say, don't use the word cheap in a corporate environment, use economical, but cheap. And secondly, the milestone should enable us to learn as much as possible with spending as less as possible resources and money. So we need to minimize the likelihood of a failure. For example, a milestone could be winning the first 3 customers. Probably customer one will come from a network, but winning the first 3 customers would be a milestone from which we would learn enough to make and take the next step. But remember, we are at a stage of big uncertainty. We will use the milestones to reduce uncertainties. Minimizing uncertainties means minimizing the risk of having a bad investment, means minimizing the risk of having a negative return on investment. The alternative would be push your luck, and that can be turned out to be very expensive. So going live and gathering first-hand experience in the field is essential in the process of discovery-driven phased approach. It provides valuable insights. We test our assumptions step by step, again and again. By doing so, we systematically convert assumptions into knowledge, reducing uncertainty. New assumptions need to be defined. So in the next phase, we need to trust the model. We need to accept that we will learn enough before taking the next step too soon. But if our assumptions are not confirmed in a satisfying way, we need to go back. We need to redo our homework. We need to reframe our expectations. Or stop the venture before blowing the budget and burning the cash. In our case, Flowerpot established a local address. They used the address of Business Markets Germany. They programmed the German website and hired external salespeople, so-called leased sales organization. They sold their terracotta flower pots in a limited scope in Germany, in the market, doing selling, delivering the products, invoicing the products, doing customer management. Assumptions were tested and confirmed. New assumptions were defined. Key documents have been updated. And remember, we have 4 key documents we use: our reverse income statement, our operation specifications, our milestone assumption plan, and the key assumption list, which is an ongoing living document which need to be updated all the time and all the time. At this point, after having done the test in a limited environment in our jump phase, we are ready to scale up the business and start with our scale up phase. This meant, in this case, that a legal entity was set up. Flowerpot Deutschland GmbH. People were hired, local logistics were set up. At this stage, so much had been learned in the previous phases that the risk of burning cash or not being able to reach the targets was minimized. Important here is to keep the spirit of parsimony alive. Spending money should be linked to the continuous monitoring of the key development indicators and dynamically updating your key documents. That's why we call our KPIs key PDs, key development indicators. We continue to test our assumptions and we continue to define new ones. I say it again, we are still in the learning mode. And while scaling up the activities, we do not exclude going back or having to go back to the pre-phase and redo our homework. Maybe if we are overperforming, we need to redefine our rules of engagement. Or maybe while the venture is underperforming, we need to stop. We need to have the courage to say stop. Or maybe we're ending up somewhere else in our journey for which we are not yet prepared. In our example, Flowerpot SRL had reached the management phase. In this phase, we have reached a level of maturity within the company. We have control of our key performance indicators and key development indicators. In this phase, we focus on increasing our operational excellence and our margins and our processes. We look at investments which makes our venture fit for future. This is a time where we normally as business markets plan a handover. Remember, our key value is to make ourselves redundant as quickly as possible. But keep in mind, treat every day as day one, as Jeff Bezos says. To summarize, in our model, pre-phase is where we do our homework, where we make our plan. In the jumpstart phase, we test our venture in a real-life environment environment at a limited scope with a limited scale. In the scale up phase, we scale up our business, we scale up our organization. In the management phase, we focus on operational excellence. And in the handover phase, we go to day-to-day operations, but basically the process continues. Treat every day as day one. We would like you to use the chat function in our Livestorm webinar software. We would like to learn from you, where do you think that using a discovery-driven phased approach would help you with your activities in the company? Where would you use it? To launch a new product, to go to markets? We would be curious to learn about it. We will respond in the chat. We will respond and discuss it after this session in Clubhouse for those who have the time, or please get in touch with us and discuss it further after this webinar. So please use the chat function in our Livestorm platform and let us know where you think using a discovery-driven phased approach would be helpful for your ventures. Once again, following a discovery-driven phased approach means that you start with focus on what you don't know, and you have to accept that. It means that you go for real options thinking based on what you're learning in the process. You accept to follow a road that is learning-driven. You adapt your activity to that what you have learned, and you revise your plan on what was learned. You accept that you might end up somewhere else. You accept that your journey might end faster than anticipated, while assumptions have not been confirmed. I am encouraging you to live the entrepreneurial spirit. We see a picture here of Richard Branson. He's an entrepreneur, but believe me, also he follows a process and a model strictly. We could have chosen Elon Musk from Tesla or the Jeff Bezos from Amazon. So please dare new things. But I would like to encourage you to have the audacity to dare those new things, but please accept the fact that there's a lot you don't know, especially at start. You have to be willing to learn continuously and using the information and benchmark it with your assumptions in a dynamic process again and again. You have to have the flexibility to have to adapt your plan. So you have to leave your comfort zone. You have to revisit it and maybe end the venture at an early stage or at a certain stage. But you have to trust the model, trust the process, allow freedom within the frame. It is basically all about creativity paired with discipline. And to come back to my namesake, Fridtjof Nansen, explorers do not always land there where they had planned to go. Recall the story of Christopher Columbus. You might land at a different, much better place than anticipated. You might have to go back to start at a certain moment. You might have to stop. But the expedition is always worth the effort. The experience you gather by entering into new ventures in a discovery-driven phased approach are sure to help you with your current and future endeavors. With that, I would like to ask Roddy to come back on the floor, and I look forward to answer some questions that have come up.
Yes, Fridtjof, I was following along the chat and the questions while you were speaking, and we found some quite interesting applications where our listeners will already employ the Ddpa approach, like improving customer service, developing new products, introducing new product lines. But a few questions also came up. And the first one specifically was, could you elaborate on what is the difference between Ddpa and agile working methods that work in sprints?
For me, working in sprint is too unidimensional to be compared with a discovery-driven phased approach. From my point of view, sprints are output-driven, and following a discovery-driven phased approach is learning-driven. So the big difference is we are in a continuous learning-driven mode.
Interesting. What are the main objections against using Ddpa in organizations?
It's difficult to say because from our point of view and my personal point of view, Ddpa is a logical process. But first of all, you have to have the discipline to be consequent in your process. Secondly, I do believe that we also have a situation where incentives for managers that are leading companies are based on totally other targets, mostly on shorter term financial targets. And here you have to have the mindset to be able that what you have planned, put it into question again, test it again, redefine, reconsider your plan, and maybe also having to stop or to correct it. And that is not a linear way forward, and maybe a bit different than conventional planning tools, from my point of view.
Okay. Well, if Ddpa is so simple, why doesn't everybody use it?
That's a good question. Ddpa is simple, but I do believe, and it's the same for us, because it's easy to tell about Ddpa and being consequent, but you have to do it. And I do believe that it's a process of having the discipline. The discipline, for example, is linked to using the key documents and updating all the time, except that your homework that you have done and made is never finished. Yeah, and compare and pair it with creativity. So I think the most important part is to keep the spirit of basic philosophy of discovery-driven planning alive, and therefore sometimes it might be helpful to have some external help.
Well, thank you very much. This concludes our session for the moment. I would invite everyone to join us on Clubhouse. If you do not have an access yet, you can apply on one through the QR code that you see on your screen. Geoff, it was a great pleasure talking to you today here on stage. Thank you very much.
It was great being here in the heart of Europe at the Ddpa studios. Please join us on Clubhouse if you have the time. Let's challenge, let's discuss the idea, and I wish you quite a lot of luck with your future ventures. Thank you for joining the webinar, and I hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.